I've decided today is going to be chest day because I wanted to postpone back day for a day because it is my favorite day. So I got something to look forward to. But today I'm actually going to be going up on weight and bench and an incline. Hopefully I'll be doing all right. And I'm really just looking to try and add a rep, add an extra 5 pounds. And I have noticed that despite losing, I think, close to 15 or 20 pounds about now, I'm actually pound for pound about the same in terms of strength. And I'm pretty happy with that. You know, I want to maintain that throughout the cut. And, you know, I found myself thinking about, you know, why I'm not as vascular, why I know I'm probably higher body fat. You know, I usually think to myself, what body fat could I be? And then I usually add 5 to 10% because, you know, I don't want to underestimate how far I've got to go because, you know, I've never been a guy with abs. And, you know, I don't have the forearm veins. I got a little definition with the right lighting, but, you know, I'm not one of those guys who's got like just spider veins all throughout the forearm, you know, but hopefully one day I will be. I see more definition in, you know, weirder places and, you know, my face thins out, but it is tough to not be a little envious when you see like there's a dude that goes in there every single day and he's got the most vascular arms. You know, he's just got, they're nuts. And the guy's lighter than me and he benches about 3 times as much as me. You know what I mean? Well, no, double. 315 is, that's double. But, you know, he'll come in every single day and eat an entire can of Planters peanuts. I mean, and I don't mean like, you know, he's, you know, working on the same can from yesterday. No, this is a new can because it'll be at different points, you know, and sometimes I even see him throw the whole thing. He eats it intra-workout. I've never seen somebody eat Planters peanuts in the middle of a workout. I've seen guys eat, you know, Sour Patch Kids, Swedish Fish, you know, gummies, chocolate or whatever. And that's usually powerlifters, but this guy's just incredibly lean. And I gotta wonder what cardio he's doing, you know, because he's got the spider veins, he's got incredible, you know, definition everywhere, but just so much more strength. But, you know, it shouldn't be something to where, you know, you compare. You can always, you know, strive to be like them and, you know, beat them, because that's a good way to look at it. You want to get better, but you can't dwell on it because then you get distracted from your own progress and you take too much time to try and be like somebody when you got to be, you know, focusing on what your own goals are and how you need to train. You know, just because he eats a thing of Planters peanuts every day, I'd get fat doing that. So whatever he's doing, you know, it's working. Maybe he's doing high intensity, you know, cardio. Maybe he's like a track athlete or something like that. But, you know, you can't, I found myself thinking like, wow, I wonder what it would be like. But you shouldn't think like that because you were created and you're you. You're not somebody else. I'm not Chris Bumstead. I'm not Russell Westbrook. I'm not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm me, you know. I, you know, have a certain metabolism. I have certain strengths, certain weaknesses, you know. And then one more thing that I need to worry about is, you know, how I'm feeling. Because when you look at somebody too much and like try to emulate them too much, that's when you forget, you know, okay, I should do this because they look like this and this works, but then, you know, you've got a weak elbow and then boom, you get hurt. Or, you know, this looks like it works for them. They do a lot of volume, but you just can't handle high volume, you know, doing 20, 40 sets of workout, ridiculous stuff like that. So you just gotta kind of focus on making your own progress and building your program around you and then figuring out what works for you, because that guy might be able to eat peanuts and anybody else, they might be able to eat a whole thing of peanuts every workout. Who knows? But the entire point is to focus on yourself and what you can do to improve yourself regardless of what everybody else is doing. So I'm gonna head to the gym, gonna hit some bench, and then I will be back to see how good or bad I did. I'm here with Coach, and that was a really good bench day, man. I'm feeling great. I upped the weight and I kept the reps the same, and then I added a rep on one of my sets of inclines. So I'm living the high life right now. I'm on cloud nine. There's not much more you can ask for on a cut. But I had some time to ponder, and between my sets, I was thinking, if I wasn't really focused in, I don't think I'd be as good as benching or any other exercise that I'm doing than if I'd stayed just, not paying attention, maybe being on my phone. But the thing that got me the most was the reason I've gotten better is because instead of, trying to emulate, I watch videos about good form and new techniques, but I've really just focused on how it feels. That's ultimately, I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. You got to focus on how you can get better. You know what I mean? And how you feel. Because, you can listen to any bodybuilder. You can listen to any power lifter, and they will give you every advice. The basics, they're important. You can learn from that. There are certain things you can be taught. But ultimately, you hit a learning curve where you have to really just, like Arnold said, get inside the muscle. And it's not about necessarily getting inside the muscle, it's not literal, but what he means is when you focus and you actually think about what you're doing, that's when you make the most progress, because everybody is different. Everybody's different. I actually saw the guy I was talking about earlier, Mr. Peanuts, and he was benching 315. Good for him, and I could dwell on that and think, damn, I should be benching that too. But instead of doing that, I just need to focus on, okay, I did, 165 for 7. Now let's do 165 for 8. Push myself hard and then feel it out as I go. You know what I mean? You won't reach the goals you want to if you just dwell on what others are doing. I could say, oh, he's on steroids. Oh, he's cheating. He's ego lifting, whatever. Or, just say, good for you, Some people have better genetics. Maybe he's on steroids, maybe he's not. Does it affect me at all? No, I don't care. I'm going to do the best job I can. If I'm benching 165, I'm going to say, damn it, I'm going to get to 170. I'm not going to try and compare myself to others that much. Yes, it's hard to do it when you're in a sport like bodybuilding or powerlifting or any kind of sport. You want to beat the competition, and that's what you should want. You should strive to do that. But you can't fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others. Because you could say, yes, they've got better this, that, the other. They lift this better than me. But guess what? To beat them, just like Coach just said, you have to get better. You have to look at yourself and say, okay, judges said my abs weren't as defined as they could be. Maybe I wasn't lean enough. My shoulders need to be bigger. Well, that's how you get better. And that's how you can beat them. You know what I mean? That's the ultimate thing you have to look for. Comparison is good. Comparison can be the thief of joy. And it's good to have healthy competition. But ultimately, to improve in anything, you have to look at what you're weak at, what you're good at, and what you're not good at. And improve both. And just do the best you can. Envy is not a good thing. You should strive to be better than yourself, and maybe to be better than others, but you can't fall into the trap of comparing yourself constantly. You have to work on what is getting you to where you want to be. Not, how can I be better than them? How can I get better as a whole? And then, that's when the success comes. So tomorrow, I'm going to be hitting back. I've been upping the cardio a little bit, going to do a little more of that, and I'm feeling great, so I'll see you guys tomorrow for one hell of a back day.